Pedro the fisherman was always whistling such a merry call.
I worked for Ken Lacco on the Betty Mac. That's how I very first started fishing. And during that time, he was always thinking about another boat that he was going to build. And that boat happened to be the Moondara. He designed lots and lots of boats. I can give you lists of all the ones that he did while I was working for him. But as you well know, to build a boat of that size, there's a lot of work goes into before it even starts. We went up to a mill in Traralgon, people by the name of Tuck, and a 62-foot piece of wood would not go through the mill. So he had an elderly man that actually cut the keel with a chainsaw. He cut 3 before he got one right. And that was, I'm not sure whether it was 16 by 18 or 16 by 14. That was the squareage of it, and it was 62 foot long. Now we received that on Good Friday. It was the only day that they could get a permit to bring it down from Traralgon to Newhaven. And that's when the work started. But prior to that, he'd been to the fisherman's, what were they, Dennis?
PFAT.
Yeah.
In Tassie.
It was a fisherman's, and Ken had been down to that, and that's where he'd met 2 people by the name of Frank White and Gordon Abel. And Gordon Abel features in one of your films. And that's where the hue and pine came from. It was a mill, not Morrison's on the foreshore, but right around the corner. And it was beautiful wood. Some of it was up to 20 foot long. I don't know where they got it from, or I never heard about that. But then when we went up to Tuck's to get the rib, there was ribs and stringers and well timbers and ribs, and it was all yellow stringy bark, cut from up, I don't know where it cut from, but it was beautiful stuff when it come, because as you well know, the ribs have got to be back cut, not quarter cut, otherwise they split open when you steam them. The film will start on, and we were, I can't remember what the amount of times it took us to do the checkout for the ribs and the garbage, and because Ken was working ahead of us the whole time. He was very hard to work with because he was thinking about 2 or 3 days ahead of what you were when you were doing the work. But he was a wonderful person. He was to me anyway, and I think Dennis will agree to that. And it started from there, and because we had to go and McPherson's to get stainless steel shafts and bolts, galvanised bolts, because you can't use rolled threads on boats, because they're galvanised, but their threads cut into 3/8, so that when they go in tight, whereas you put a rolled thread in, it goes in loose, and that causes leaks. And then there was I think it was a 3.5 or 4 inch stainless steel shaft went into it, 4-bladed prop. That came, well, the steelwork stuff, all and the copper tubing all come from McPherson's. And then there was the U-banks. They come from
C.H. Smith?
Yeah, that was right. Yeah,
Smith.
Yeah, that's him. He was in Flinders. He had a little shop in Flinders Street.
Yep,
and the rest of it come from Ingle Smiths, which went out of business, I think. That is a U-bank. When you build boats, everything is drilled prior to using copper nails or U-banks. Now they are a galvanised U-bank, and apparently in the early days all the old English yachts and that were built with U-banks, because once you drive it in, you can't get it out.
It's wedge-shaped, isn't it?
Yes, and it's got that one is probably a reject, but the head's right. But sometimes you get them, but they're generally a bit bigger than that, and they're sort of round like that. Now, we tried to get one out once, and all we did was smash the what's the names to get them out. You just can't get them out, but you have to drill. You drill the size of the head, then you drill another one, and then then you put a smaller one. You got 2 drills, and then you got to belt it in, and it goes down below when you belt it in, because you've countersunk, and so that you can putty over the top. That's the U-bank.
Do you bend them over on the inside?
Well, you've got to be very careful because they will snap off, because apparently so they're supposed to be like a rustless iron, but I know we did have some troubles trying to bend them. But
Steel, weren't they?
yeah, but they're not. You don't have to worry about bending them over because they won't come out. We've tried. Oh, no way. We tried, and that's Ken gave us all a 2-foot ruler. He said, and he gave it to us before we started. Neil and I got one each, and he had one. He would never use a 3-foot ruler.
Why?
Because he said you can get into very small areas with a 2-foot ruler, but you can't with a 3-foot ruler because the sections there's too long. And he always measured everything. His theory was measure once, cut once. He said if you measure twice, you can get 2 different numbers, and he said then you've got to do it a third time. So he said always measure once and cut once. And I followed that theory right through to this day. And anyway, he then, well, that was the timber for the which you'll see later on in the film. That is the thickness. That there is the thickness of Huon pine that come from Strawn. It come from Gordon Abel and Frank White's mill, not Morrison's. It was beautiful wood when it come. It's one of the few woods, as you well know, you can use from sap to heart. But it is very hard on the eyes because they seem to think it's got silicon in it. And if you're sanding, you must wear goggles and everything and breathing because it does cut your eyes, even though it's a beautiful soft wood. We used to burn the offcuts in the steamer, and we should have kept every single piece of it because you're not allowed to cut it anymore. Yeah, well, this is the keel that came down from Tuck's Mill. It came down on Good Friday. It was the only day that he was allowed to bring it down because it was 60 foot long, and they dropped it off on Good Friday, and we worked on it right through from April right away through to November. The stern posts, which is those ones that come up off the keel up onto the horn timber, now that's all red gum. That was cut by Jimmy Hodgkinson. He had a little mill down at Oakley, and if ever he got a big tree from up north, because he said the only good red gum have to come off the Murray River, and he supplied all the red gum for that, and all up the stem that was all red gum too. The boat was built alongside Ken's house. That was it. It was 18 foot beam and 62 foot long. The transom was out of yellow stringing. Yeah, that came from up at Tuck's too. Now, in the drawings on his plans, you see all those frames. He cuts all those frames out in the shed, and then they're all cut to the drawings of the plan because the plan is drawn with all those frames, and then you've got to he puts what do you call them, stringers, I guess, for the full length of the boat, so that when you're putting the ribs on, they're bent around all of the stringers, and then he then measures from
Stringers or ribbons?
Well, he called them stringers.
These were on the outside of the frame.
No, you'll see them shortly and you'll see it shortly where he puts all them on. And now what he does, I just run to it. That's Ken up there, but you see, you can see all the timber that goes inside because Lacco's always ribbed on the outside, never on the inside. Pompey's in the early days, used to rib on the inside. And that's the ribs going through now. They were 4 by 1.5, and there was two of them for every rib.
Yeah.
Yes, Ken on the buzzer, yeah. I never got a lot of Ken, unfortunately. But, yeah, that's Neil Lacco and Greg, and they're putting the ribs after they've been through the thicknesser. And you'll see in a moment where they take them out. That's Ken. He was a labourer as well as a builder. He never stopped. There he is. Now you'll see where all those stringers go right away through the whole boat, and that's where the ribs are nailed to them as when they're bent. They're nailed to those, and then the planks are put on after that on the outside. Now that's the garboard plank going in. Ken always put the garboard plank in because it's checked into the keel and into the stem, and here they are. This is a bit later on when a lot of the ribs have been done, but this is how they're bent. He's doing it with bare hands, no gloves. But to see, because it's flat cut, it will bend. But if it's Ken always called it flat cut, but I think a miller will call it back cut. But you can see now where those stringers that go through, how the ribs go to that. They put clamps on as we go, and that was my brother doing that day. But it's marvellous how the shape. See, this is after the planking's been half done, really, and that's Ken.
You couldn't film all day, mate, could you?
No, he's a very, very clever man, though. I still admire his ability to do what he did. And well, I planked the port side, and Neil planked the starboard side, and he kept us going continuously. We never stopped because he was working in the shed the whole time. But
How many days did it take you to plank it?
Oh, I think it was about 17 days or something.
Wasn't many.
Yeah, it wasn't very many. I can't remember then. I think it was 17 or something per side, because I think the planking was coming in about 150 or 200. I'm not sure which the width of the planking, because it comes in narrow and it goes big and out back narrow. But he'd bought a couple of electric planes which made things a lot easier with the planking, especially because it's all got to be cut with a bandsaw, and then he planes them up and then puts a cork and seam on the two edges, and then he would keep going there a bit more. And, well, you see how dark it is, and this is the winter time, of course, and film was, well, you can see the amount of timber that goes inside to hold everything, so that when you're ribbing in it doesn't pull it apart, and there's a lot of thought got to go, and a lot of timber comes out too. But
and she was 60 feet on the deck, was she?
62 foot.
62 foot 11, I think she was.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
17 foot 7 wide.
Yeah, but I think it was one of the biggest ones that he'd actually built. See, the Kaimu was only
60, 59.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but this one was a bit longer. But he designed it. He reckoned that it would do 10 knots, and it actually did do 10 knots. But
that was with a a VHGM.
Yeah,
yes, yeah.
It averaged 10.
Yeah. A lot of people challenged us, but nobody ever beat us.
We could go from here to the Black Pyramid in 12 and a half hours.
Yeah.
He wasn't afraid of the throttle either.
No, well, see, the motor did 1800 revs, and most times he only travelled at 1550. He cut back on the revs a bit, because there was one fisherman here challenged us when he came over to have a look at the boat, and he said, you'll never be able to pay for the dieseline. and Ken says, he said, I'll tell you what. He said, we're going down to Flinders Island fishing. He said, and when you go in and to unload your crays, we'll go in to unload ours. And then he said, we'll check on how much fuel we put in each boat. And well, it turned out we put in a fraction less than what the other guy did, because of the fact...
His attitude was, you got there and you had an extra shot.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter. And she was pretty fuel. If we were doing the same as an 8-knot boat, we'd use the same or less than the Betty Mac.
Yeah, that's right.
Just doing 1,100, 1,200 revs.
Yeah, that's right.
Pretty economical.
Yeah, it was. Now, they're the floor timbers that go in. They're all red gum. As you can see, they're all bolted through the ribs and onto the planking outside. And they were all cut by Jimmy Hodgkinson. And they go right away through all and that holds everything together. And then the well comes in there shortly. That's the start. Yeah, well, that's the well board's going up. Unfortunately, the timber was green, of course, and we did have a few leak problems, but we got over it. As you see, there he is. Look at that.
Yes.
You know.
I always laugh at him doing that. Neil's holding the board. That's what he did.
Yeah, oh, yeah. He was unbelievable.
Yeah, he just say, get out of the way.
Yeah, but I think he had a scar for almost every boat he ever built. He had a big one right across here, where a plank flew off. I think it was, I don't know if it was the Koima or one of them, and I'll tell you a bit later on what happened to him too. Now that's all the inside out, and that's all the deck beams. That come from Jimmy Hodgkinson. That was Australian going Oregon. You can see some of the stanchions just starting to go up now. They were all the stanchions around. You can see the shelf right around.
All the stanchions were what?
The stanchions are all red gum. But you can see the work that does go in to put the. I think Neil did most of the deck beam. Ken did some, but Neil was very good with the timber. He fitted. Well, Ken got all the stanchions ready, and Neil had to fit them into the shelf. Now that's the fuel tanks going in. They were supplied by BP. They paid for the fuel tanks, provided Ken used.
It had to hold 1,000 gallons, didn't it?
Yeah. And he had to use BP diesel and BP oil.
Yep.
Now Ken, he bought a 44-gallon drum of oil because he liked to change the oil pretty regular, but after he used the 44, he went back to his Sunoco oil. When the well was getting built, Ken was in. There's a distance between the gunnels and the well, and his brother-in-law was inside to put the timbers on to hold the well boards all together, and it was West Australian cray. And it was very, very hard. And what Ken used to do with a big bit, he always followed the knurl off the bit, so that it was just straight, and that stopped him from grabbing, just twisting your arm. And anyway, he was standing in the area measuring up for the fuel tanks, and his brother-in-law was pushing the drill because you've got to push hard because the worm won't pull your drill in. Anyway, he'd come through and he put a half-inch auger right through his leg there. And I was up in there with him, helping him, and I said to his brother-in-law, for God's sake, stop. Anyway, I said, just wind it back by hand. Anyway, wound it back and got him off the drill. And of course, we had to take him over to the doctor then, and the doctor said, he said, we'll have to be careful because he said it's gone through your pants and through your leg, and anyway, he said, you better have a couple of weeks off. I think he had 2 days off and he was back in the shed again. And that's doing the decking was celery top, 4x2, and that's countersinking for the U-bank, and then you'll see in a moment where, that's done with an auger, a brace and bit, of course, see, and you'll see, and that's Greg doing that, and you'll see in a minute, and then Neil will come along. You see, you drill one that's the biggest part of the drill there, and the other one goes right away down into the deck beam, because he used all steel drills, but they had a place in Melbourne where we used to go and buy them. They're all about that long, so that they go deep. Ordinary normal drill's only about that big, but you'll see now as the U-banks go in. See how they go right in, that's for the countersink. because that was green wood too. I don't know where they got that from, but they must have had a forest somewhere where they got it. Celery top, yeah. It was beautiful wood. And that's, see, all of that bulwarks, that's all New Guinea teak. Come from West Irian. When the Dutch left West Irian, Indonesia took it over. And Jimmy Hodgson must have got a heap of it, and he brought it down to Ken. And he had it in his shed for a long time because it was really dry. And they say that when the Dutch left West Irian, they set fire to the wharfs and burnt all the wood. Now all those timbers in that well, the partitions, that's all New Guinea teak. I have some here. I had it there. It's a very brown wood. It's got lots of oil in it. And
We're looking in the well.
Yes.
that is the well, yes. And that's the partitions that went in. And the amazing part about it is how he can put, there sitting on that ground there, he can put that water line on that boat. That's an art in its own. That's an art in its own, because you'll see why later on. Now this is Henry Donoghue. Now Henry was a house remover in Wonthaggi, and he brought his whole crew down, and they jacked her up, put the jinker underneath, and now you're watching pull the boat out.
This was a feat on its own.
Oh, absolutely. It was unbelievable. They say that he could put a house within a half an inch. It was that good. And you'll see why when he goes down here. Because it was too high. That's Neil up in the boat. Yep. He had to have wooden props to push the power lines up so they could get underneath it. But you see how he got that out there. Now he's going around this corner. When we went round this corner, one of those chains broke. And the boat started to lean, we thought we'd lost the boat. But it just because the jimper went along and it had a... This is the next day. We were supposed to get it down the first day, but we didn't get it down the first day because of the broken chain. And anyway, Henry bought more chains and put it on, and this was the props. You see, what he did was, these guys you can see underneath the boat there, they're all Henry's men, and they put stones on the road all the way down, and Henry put his wheels on those stones going down that thing. He only pulled up twice, and then put it straight down again. It was unbelievable.
This got launched at the local boat ramp.
Yeah.
Here.
It was the old boat ramp too, because it had a curve in it going down. That was the big problem. There was an old Chev truck who had front wheel drive and rear wheel drive. By Jove, it was marvellous what he did. Because I think it was registered as about 30 tonne, I think.
And she sat there for 2
All
or 3 days.
Yeah.
It blew gale of northeast.
Yeah, and then they had to get Teddy Van Burn come around with the Woolamai and ended up towing us off.
And Bruce and I were there, these little 12-foot dinghies, running the ropes out.
Yeah,
Gale wind.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to come off.
Yeah, we thought it, because the waves started to rock the boat.
Yeah.
And that's when he said, Teddy Van Burn come over and towed it off. It come off all right, so no damage. But there it is sitting there.
I reckon that was the nervous 3 or 4 days in Ken's life.
Well, he thought he'd lost it when it come around when the chain broke.
Yeah.
He really did.
The tide didn't come in.
Yeah. Everything went wrong, but that's the well house that was built in the shed and bought out.
This was a wet weather job, Gary. There's always something to do.
Yeah. The wheelhouse made of plywood, heavy plywood. That's other people that have come to look and help. But it was all because a little bit you'll see the hole there, that's the galley, and in front of that there's the engine room. You'll see that yellow wood, that's yew and pine. He put all that because that can be removed, so that if they ever want to get the engine out, it can come out through that hole. Because you'll see how they drop it in a minute. That's the engine going in there now. Detroit diesel.
Drive them as if you hate them.
Hey?
Drive them as if you hate them.
Yeah.
I loved them.
Yeah. Well, there used to be a lot of GMs in cattle trucks, and that's an uncle of mine. That had a 400 volt alternator on a 3-cylinder lister. That's the panel there, because he put a freezer in the ice room, and that was the power they used. It was air cooled motor. Now he's. There was a reason we had to go on the slip or something.
We had to go on to do the well.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes, yeah.
Concrete.
Yeah.
In those days, you concreted all the well.
Yeah, because
beer bottles in the holes. And there was, I don't know, there was another reason we had to go on, and might have to put something underneath.
Yeah, well,
Seacocks or.
Yeah. There was a few things had to go on anyway, but anyway, that was the old slip. There was another slip over further, and now we've got none. That's some other people that came to help. I don't know, was you on there then?
Yeah.
Yeah. I stayed off and took the film for him.
Yeah. That's when I had to concrete up under the fuel tanks.
Oh,
I was the only one, believe it or not, I was the only one small enough to get up there. Well, he said, you'll be right.
Yeah, he was only a little fella in them days too. But you see, now this is what the amazing part is. You watch this water line when she goes into float. You see, because she's got nothing on the front end to bring her down yet to that water line.
Yep.
And that's the new bridge getting built. And there she is. She's going to, the people come down from the GM, they're out at Footscray to put her through her trials. But he used to try to get the bow wave to come off and then come up again at the well, so you didn't steam the water out of the well. He just about got it right, but it's a little bit, see, she's taken a bit out the middle there, because he said that's the biggest part of your boat's got your most buoyancy. And you try to get that wave, it just come back towards the galley rather than the middle of the well.
And I had to build 40 pots.
Yeah, that's right.
I never built a pot in my life.
Yeah, well, we soon learnt though. But unfortunately, it was very hard to get good sticks in them days. You can see how bent and twisted they are, but they still caught crays.
No doubt about big pots.
Yeah, because he always wanted big pots, but in Tassie they used small pots because they could use them in the dinghies, whereas these are a bit too big for dinghies. You couldn't get enough in them. And there's BP putting their.
And that's 1,000 gallons, and it had to take all the diesel to get the money for the fuel tanks.
Yeah.
1,000 gallons a side.
No, 1,000 gallons all.
Yeah. And here we are.
Yeah, what's that?
We're heading off, and that's the Koima coming in as we were going out.
Yeah.
Going out on our maiden voyage.
Detected a tear in Ken's eye that day.
Yeah.
Because it's right on daylight.
Yeah.
And she was coming up to go on the slip, and we were going to Flinders Island, and this was on the 18th of November, 1968.
Yeah. Yes. This is down to the prom, heading down, going out down through Burke Street, Little Burke Street as they call it. I think you got a bit sick down about there.
I got a bit sick. I was glad to see Babel Island.
And this is on the top of Babel Island, looking across. That's the sort of sandbar.
We're up at Mount Emma.
Babel Island.
Yeah.
And that's looking down the coast to the south. And that's looking up on the Babel, looking
That's where I
down.
got my daughter's name from there, Mount Emma.
Yeah.
Named Emma.
Yeah. There's mutton birds there from there to the right top of Babel. And they bird legally there, because there used to be a chap who we used to sell our crays to called Bill Holloway. He had a hut over on the other side of Bay.
Holloway's hut, yeah.
And he said that one year there was 1 million mutton birds come off Babel Island. They used to pluck them split them and salt them, and they put them in barrels, and then they'd come along later on and pick them up. But most of the birding was done by the Aboriginals from down on what's that bottom island where they.
So we spent 6 weeks from the 18th on 4 weeks, wasn't it, Christmas.
Yeah.
We stayed down here till Christmas.
Yes.
We're too poor to go home.
That's a turtle that got caught up in our pots. I don't know why, but those turtles seem to be there around Babel Island there. Now this is on the Betty Mac. This is not on the Moondara. This is Dennis's brother, Bruce. Yeah, he did.
He worked with Ken. When he stopped working for Ken, they built the Moondara.
Yeah.
And then when the Moondara, I used to work on a farm, and anyway, I left the farm. My dad said, "You go and see Uncle Ken. He'll need a crew, and you'll make a few bob with him." And I said, "I've got a job with this other bloke." And anyway, I said, "He's going to pay 25%. And the old man said, 25% of stuff all. He said, you take the offer from Ken.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
Good decision.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Yes. But as I say, this is on the Betty Mac. So
This is King Island.
yes, yeah, it is King Island. Yeah. But he was thinking the whole time. He was a very, very good cray fisherman. He could catch crays all right, because we did all right, didn't we, Dennis?
Did pretty good.
Yeah.
We're talking earlier, or speaking about it pretty often actually, Gary, everyone that worked for Ken built a house.
Yeah.
And I can't think of any that worked for him that didn't.
Now, well, see,
They made enough to build a house.
Made enough to buy a block of land, build a house.
Yeah. I did the same.
Yeah.
And the thing is, he wouldn't do you for 1 single cent.
He paid, when Bruce and Noel worked, they got paid 25% each.
Yeah.
Less expenses.
Yes.
50% of the... Unbelievable. When Moondara, I was on 17%.
Yeah.
Less expensive, but good money.
Yeah.
Good money. And we're getting stuff all for crays and we're still making good money.
Yeah, well, the first year that I went down to Babel Island, we got 2 3/4 a pound. And
that was on the Betty Mac? Or?
On the Betty Mac, yeah. And the second year we went down, we get 2 6/4. We thought, we'll make a fortune this year. Got an extra 6p a pound. And even when we were went down the west coast, we still only got $1, wasn't it? $1 a kilo.
It was under $1, I think.
No, I think the most we got was $1.
Yeah.
And yet we were Savcol's top boat.
Yeah, it was 55 cents a pound.
Yeah. And we always got done when we come home with our crays. We could fill a bag down at Flinders Island. We never got under £100 per bag, because I used to stack. Dennis used to dip, and Ken would be helping with a bag and 2. And I could bag at least 100, between 120 and 130 pound, depending on the crays. And when you send the crays down to Melbourne, you rarely got 100. They say, oh yeah, we had to allow for dides. They weren't dides at all. Now this is on the Moondara. See that tipper that's on there now? That's one that Ken designed. You might see it again, I don't know, but we're dipping our crays now. But
Who's on the scoop?
Me. I was always on the scoop. We had one good blue in our life.
Yeah.
The middle pound.
Yeah, it was a really big pound.
Real big pound.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we rarely ever used it because it was 3 down the side.
After a while, we rarely used it.
Yeah.
I said, you put any more friggin' crays in that middle pound blue, you're going in there to get them out.
This is at the Savcol factory.
At Margate?
At Margate, yes. We were their top boat. Because we got to know the manager. He was a really nice fellow, Fred. And if we came in, Fred Fletcher, yes. And
him and Ken become very good friends.
Oh yeah. Well, he used to invite us if we went in, if we took crays in, you'd let them know that you were coming in, of course, and they'd come back after work and take a boat. And his wife would have a roast dinner for us when we got there. It was unbelievable, wasn't it, Dennis?
Yep. Yeah.
She was a lovely person. So
They were good. They were good to us.
yeah, and if we wanted to go and get vegetables or supplies, we always had a vehicle supplied for us.
You're clacking that ruler now.
Put it
That
down.
ruler down, Blue.
Anyway, this is, you see, what a lot of fishermen used to do was they'd hose the bags down with the crays, and of course they were a bit smarter here. They empty the crays out and then weigh the bags.
Yeah.
But they ended up going into those fibre bags, and they used to get a lot of spikes in the legs from them.
Yeah.
The spikes used to come through the bag. But you'll see it in a minute how they're doing the crays. There they're tailing the crays. They're tailed alive. I don't know whether you'll be allowed to do it now, but it was done very quick. So, and then they used to keep all the bodies, and they used to put them in the freezer when they had nothing much to do in the winter time. They'd keep the girls employed by taking the flesh out of the legs.
We used to, or Noel didn't, but Paul Ken's son, he worked with Snow and the Betty Mac. We worked there when we were in port because there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So we got on the payroll, and it was good.
Yeah.
Good, yeah, quite enjoyed it. It was just one of those things you did in those days.
Yeah. They put them in a minute, as soon as they've tailed them and taken any bits off it, they put them into ice water to stop the bleeding. Well, that's what they told us, but anyway, here look at how they can get.
A lot of people worked there, Gary.
Yeah, and they were very good too.
I don't know how many, was a lot there.
What's happening here?
We're going up to North East River.
Yeah, that's right.
Up at North East River. Joe
On
Green.
Flinders Island.
Yeah.
Joe Greeno put us on the patch of the salmon, mate. The salmon up there, North East River. Go up there. We carried a seine dinghy and a seine net.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going up there to catch all these salmon. How many cobblers did we get, Blue? Come on, how many?
I would hate to think, but we were lucky we never got stung anyway.
Anyway, all we wanted to do was kill Joe Greeno.
And yet, when we went into port at Flinders Island and Joe Greeno was in port, we were always asked to his place for a roast dinner at night.
Yep.
The reason being, many years ago, because Joe was an Italian, he came over from Victoria, and he went over to Flinders Island, he married Elsie, wasn't it?
Elsie Greeno.
Yeah, Elsie. Yeah, she was Elsie, she was an Aboriginal woman, lovely person. And she had one of the finest shell collections you'd ever wish to see. She used to deal in shells all around the world.
Maynard, wasn't she?
Yeah, Maynard. Her father used to make all the cray pots for the fishermen at Flinders Island. He was a really, really nice fella. And we always had a roast dinner. Yeah, this is long lining.
Yeah, we must have been four-handed here because Noel's
Yeah,
still...
yeah, we were.
Neil.
Shooting the hooks.
Yeah, shooting long line hooks. This is before we put nets on.
Who's shooting the hooks?
Neil.
And that's Dennis standing there, and I'm taking the film.
And
Ken's in the wheelhouse. This blue thing, we never liked that, but that was Betty's favourite colour.
That was the end of the story.
Yeah. She had purple carpet in her room, and her lounge room was painted purple too. But,
I don't know, were we just sharking this trip?
yeah, just sharking, yeah. You'll see in a minute when we start hauling. I don't know.
Don't you like sharking? Long lining.
Oh, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Gary.
It was good when you were catching a few, wasn't it?
It's all right.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, these are,
We caught a few on the Moondara.
yeah, but you see, this is before the band came in.
Yeah.
The band came in when we had got nets.
Nets, yeah.
But we got onto a good patch of schoolies there somewhere, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, we had,
Yeah.
This would be where?
Yeah.
East or west of Flinders?
Yep, it was, yeah, on the edge of the shelf. On the
Yeah. It's fairly well away.
When we fished out of Babel.
Yeah, well, that's me gutting fish. I was the gutter. One trip, it wasn't when Dennis was on board, but we shot the nets, and we got 120 boxes.
Yeah.
It was the first time I ever gutted 100 boxes of shark. That was down at Flinders Island.
We were having a
About
pretty...
500 fish. 500 or 600 fish.
It would have been. The nets were absolutely chock-a-block full of shark, and they were all just come in. They were all females got rid of their pups, and they were all chock-a-block full of scallops. They'd come in to feed on scallops.
I don't know whether it was this day, but one day there was bloody snapper shark were coming up Gary and they're bitten off.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're looking at, a big white pointer come up hanging on the one. And I don't know, I reckon it was 2 steps and I was the other side of the boat.
Yeah, that's son's, Ken's youngest son.
It's Paul.
That's Paul.
Paul finished up taking over the Moondara.
But I don't know, the quality of the fish was never the same out of the nets as it is on the hooked.
But Ken was, what was he, 55 when he built the Moon, 50 or 55 when he built the Moondara?
Oh, he had to be. Yeah, he had to be.
Mammoth effort. Mammoth effort.
Yeah. They say, he told me that he took over his father's business when he was 16 years old, because his father was not a businessman, but there was Jumbo, Ken, Alec was the youngest, and there was another one. What was the other one? They ended up, Jumbo never stayed building, but the other two went and worked for Pompey, and they built a lot of the boats that Ken designed afterwards. When the band came in, the fisheries come down to Ken and asked if they could hire the boat to go and do a tagging survey to find out where the sharks go. And anyway, I don't think you weren't on it then.
No, I was never on it with Paul.
No, well, you didn't. You were on your own, yeah. And they put these tags in the gummies, or any shark that we caught, because they were all caught on long line, so that we could let them go. Now, there was one of these gummy sharks was tagged down at the Patriarchs in Flinders Island, and the tag was returned from the Gulf of St Vincent's in South Australia. That's how far he travelled. When we chucked him over, he must have never stopped going flat out till he got to Gulf of St Vincent's. And these are the fisheries guys doing all this work. We had the fisheries on board. There was about, I think there was 4 of them to do the survey. Now that's the Woolamai. We're passing the Woolamai, and that's Terry Walker. He was in the fisheries. He was a fisheries man.
Okay, now I'll just play it.
Yeah, there we go now. Now the fisheries supplied these nets because they wanted to catch fish of all different sizes. Now these are little, what do they call them, Dennis? They've got a little spike on them.
Birdogs.
Yes, birdogs. I know that in early days, Hockey Churchill used to keep them to send to the university for the medical students. That's me gutting a shark. And that's Dennis fighting with one in I think it's Dennis. No, you do it on. That's Paul. That's down off Flinders Island somewhere. This is coming home. It's just a bit of rough weather.
You can never ever film as it is.
That's right.
Never.
No.
I've seen real rough weather and tried to film it.
Yeah. Well, we spent one night down at Flinders Island in the winter time. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and Hobart Radio come on to ask if there's any boats in the vicinity of Babel Island. Ken was there, and Graham Holway, he was there. He had a steel boat, and there was a boat been sitting up off Gabo Island for over a week. And they were forecasting a nor'westerly gale, and he thought it was never come. So he headed off towards Hobart. There was 2 brothers and his son. One of them's their son. It was a boat called the Kayyu, Kayyu, Kiyu, I think it was. Anyway, Hobart Radio received a Mayday call out off Flinders Island. I don't know how far off, but it was blowing a gale, I know that. It was over force 5. And of course, when you get a call like that, fishermen will always go. at 4 o'clock we left Babel, and we got a hiding going out there. We got out, we saw a light, we actually saw a light, we thought it must have been a flare, but it was the search plane that came from Flinders Island, from Sale, and they flew over the top of us and took off back to Sale, I think. And anyway, if we'd have found the boat or anybody there, we could never ever have picked them up, never. The sea was so bad. And anyway, we turned around at 10 o'clock at night to go back to Babel. You couldn't, there was no stars, it was pitch black and blowing a howling gale. There was a bloke called the Gypsy, it was a weather boat for the oil rigs. And they gave Hobart Radio the conditions. It was force 5 point something, and there was a 3 metre swell with I don't know how many mil slop in between. And there was another boat inshore from us, and he got onto us and asked us how we're going. He said, we're not going. He said, what horsepower you got? And we said, we've got 227. He said, well, I've got 1,250. He said, no, I ain't doing it real well in here. So anyway, we never heard from them anymore. But we got back to Babel at 8 o'clock in the morning. And you couldn't use the pilot. The boat was lurching so bad that the compass was jamming in the binnacle, and you had to knock it down so you could still see her. Because every time a wave hit you with the pilot, it knocked it over and it went on to the next card and it'd steer you off to Blazer. So it was purely steer by hand all night. Shocking day. But anyway, we got home. I think I was glad, because I think sometimes we took over green water over the bow of that boat, and she was a pretty high wooded boat, but it was a shocking night. They used to build boats down at Rosebud. They used to have 5 20 to 25 foot like cooter boats set up at once, because all the boys, the father, Ken's father Mitch, and their grandfather. Now, according to Ken, originally their name was hyphenated. It was Lacco. Somewhere along the line they doubled it up and just called it Lacco, Lacco. Now, they used to build down there at Rosebud, and he was telling me that the 5, well, there was Georgie, Alec, Ken, Jumbo, what was the other one? There's 5 brothers.
I forget.
The others went to work for Pompey anyway. Yeah, but anyway, he said that Alec used to do all the finishing off inside of all the boats. They said he was the best of the whole lot. Ken never ever had money to finish things off really well. He was always got to go fishing. He said, I don't make money building boats, I only make money when I go fishing. And of course, he designed so many boats. I'll give you a list of all the ones that I know that he designed, the bigger boats, but he spent days doing a design of a boat, and he got nothing for it, really nothing for it.
What I admired about him was we'd come home and we needed the scene net. He wanted to go scene net.
Yeah.
And we built the bloody dinghy.
Yeah.
He said, get that bondwood down. She's all made out of bondwood.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
We cut up these sheets of bondwood.
Yeah.
We got the bloody, and I think it was about 4 or 5 days, we had a brand new dinghy.
Yeah, that's right.
It took me longer to paint it, didn't to build it. Yeah. So, he was fantastic.
Ken would never ever allow a radio in the shed. It was a no-no.
Yeah.
No smoking, no radio.
Yes,
he designed the Baron J. It was a canoe stern or cruiser stern as they call it, because he wanted to work in the tide, and he reckons a canoe stern would be better working in the tide than an ordinary boat.
Another canoe stern boat he designed here was the Margaret White, and you know Joey Pike, he's been dead now. Anyway, Joey got Ken to design a 50-footer, which turned out to be the Wave Crest, which was the same design as the Margaret White.
Yeah.
And anyway, Joey and Dutz being a bit tall, and in those days, Joe wrote a letter to Ken, and Ken had the letter, wrote a letter and said, "Dear Mr. Lacco," this is the letter, he said, got the plans for the boat, and would it be all right if we raised her a plank to get a bit of headroom. So Ken's wrote back to them to tell him, because Joey's told me all this, wrote back to them, yeah, that would be all right, that you could go a plank, no worries at all, do her justice. So they made the wave crest a plank high, and she was always had that headroom in it, but she was a lovely boat that points.
Moondara was sold to New Zealand owners in the late 1990s, converted to a pleasure boat. We're not sure where she is now. Betty Mack also went out of the industry and converted to pleasure. She's had an interesting life since, cruising as far as Alaska. The beautiful wave crest was unfortunately lost in a storm at Bicheno in about 2012. Ken designed dozens of boats, including the Jane Kerr for me, which is also used recreationally, and influenced the design of many more, especially those built by Jack Pompey and Co. at Moondara. Ken passed away in 2002 at the age of 89, a great loss to the maritime community. May he rest in peace.